Okay, so you've heard of Seneca, right?
Yeah.
This Roman philosopher, like everyone's talking about these days.
Yeah, he's having a moment.
But maybe you're thinking, ancient Rome, philosophy. Yeah, sounds kind of heavy.
I get it. It can seem that way.
But trust me, it's not. That's why we're doing this deep dive. We're going into Seneca's letters. They're kind of like advice columns from like 2,000 years ago.
Exactly.
And spoiler alert, his advice is surprisingly relevant to us today, like super relevant to our modern lives.
What's so fascinating about Seneca is that he wasn't just, some philosopher stuck in an ivory tower.
Oh, right. He was involved in real-life stuff, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He was right there in the middle of Roman politics, even advising Emperor Nero.
Wow, okay, that's pretty impressive.
It gives his writing this real-world edge, this, urgency. You don't always find that with ancient philosophers.
Right, it's like he's trying to figure out how to be a good person, how to be happy.
Yeah.
While dealing with, crazy emperors and all this political drama.
Oh, totally.
Sounds a bit like Twitter these days, don't you think?
Huh. There are definitely some parallels. So before we jump into the letters themselves, let's go back in time for a second.
Okay, time travel. I'm in.
Let's meet the man himself.
All right, set the scene. Who was Seneca?
Well, picture ancient Rome. It's bustling, this huge empire, gladiators, emperors.
Yeah, okay, I'm picturing it.
And philosophers. That's where Seneca comes in. He was born in Spain, actually.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Around 4 BC, his family was wealthy, well-connected, the elite.
So he had a pretty privileged upbringing.
Very much so. He got this top-notch education in Rome.
Okay, so not your average Roman on the street, right?
Exactly. He was studying rhetoric, philosophy, law, everything he needed to know to, climb the Roman power ladder.
The ladder to success.
And he did climb it. He became a senator, a famous playwright.
Wow.
And then eventually he became an advisor to the young Emperor Nero.
Okay, wasn't Nero kind of, notorious?
Yeah, Nero was complex. Let's just say that.
Complex is a good word for it.
Seneca's relationship with him, full of drama.
I can imagine.
He was trying to guide Nero, towards wisdom and being a good ruler.
Right.
But ultimately, Nero's darker side, it took over.
That must have been so tough, trying to, be the voice of reason when the emperor could just,
Yeah, have you executed on a whim?
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a high-pressure job, to say the least.
Okay.
And this tension, this struggle to live a good life amidst all the chaos of Roman politics, that's what makes Seneca so interesting.
That's like he was really living it.
He wasn't just talking the talk, he was walking the walk in a super high-stakes environment.
Yeah, no pressure there. So he's giving us this philosophical playbook, but it's based on real life, not just theory, right?
Precisely. And the philosophy that helped him through all of that? Stoicism.
Okay, Stoicism. I've heard the term, but to be honest, it always sounded kind of, I don't know, intimidating.
I totally get that. But at its core, Stoicism is all about finding inner peace and strength.
Okay, that sounds less intimidating.
No matter what's happening around you.
So it's like a philosophy for dealing with all the craziness of life.
You got it. Think of it like mental training.
Mental training.
Yeah. The Stoics believed that true happiness comes from within.
From within.
From mastering your own thoughts, your own emotions.
So it's not about suppressing emotions entirely?
No, not at all.
It's more like choosing how we respond to them.
Exactly. It's about building resilience, like finding that calm in the middle of a storm.
Okay, I like that. Calm in the storm.
And Seneca, in his letters, he gives us practical advice on how to do that.
I'm starting to see why people are so into him. It's like ancient wisdom, but for, modern problems.
Right. He dealt with stuff we still struggle with today. Dealing with fear, finding your purpose, coping with loss, even navigating those tricky relationships.
Oh, yeah, those are always tricky.
And he does it all with this amazing blend of wisdom and wit.
Okay, you've got me hooked. Let's get into those letters. What are some of the juicy bits of wisdom Seneca drops in his letters?
Well, one that always struck me is his idea of self-sufficiency.
Self-sufficiency, okay.
He says we should try to be content within ourselves, not relying on external things like wealth, fame, or what other people think of us.
So not becoming a hermit, but finding that inner strength so you're not completely dependent on what's happening around you.
That's it. It's about building that inner fortress, that calm amidst the chaos we were talking about.
Yeah, I remember.
And remember, he was living in the heart of the Roman Empire when he was saying this.
Right.
So it's not just some idealistic theory. It's rooted in his own experience.
I'm really curious to hear more about this. What about some other takeaways? Like, what else does Seneca offer in these letters?
Oh, there's so much. He talks about virtue, about living in harmony with nature, facing your fears head on.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
And he does it all with this incredible wit, this humor, so it never feels preachy or boring.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. So, Seneca, a Roman philosopher who was also a major player in this world of emperors and gladiators.
Yes.
And he turns to Stoicism to find meaning and purpose in a world that was, full of chaos and challenges.
Exactly.
And he leaves behind these letters that are packed with wisdom that is surprisingly relevant to us today.
That's a pretty good summary. And what's even more amazing, these weren't meant to be some big philosophical treatise.
Oh, really?
They were personal letters written to his friend Lucilius.
Oh, cool. So it's like we're getting this inside look.
Yeah. Offering advice, sharing his own struggles, exploring these big questions about how to live a good life.
So, like eavesdropping on a conversation between two friends trying to figure life out?
Precisely. And that's what makes them so relatable, so human. You get this feeling that Seneca is right there with you.
Yeah.
Grappling with the same challenges, looking for the same answers.
Okay, ready to dive deeper. Let's get into some specific examples from these letters.
Yeah.
The passages that really highlight his unique perspective and his timeless wisdom.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Seneca's letters.
It's pretty amazing to think that these were just like personal notes,
Yeah.
scribbled almost 2,000 years ago.
Yeah,
And they're still speaking to people today.
it's incredible, right?
So last time, we got to know Seneca himself, philosopher, playwright, politician,
Mm-hmm.
navigating that crazy world of ancient Rome.
Yeah, she had a busy life.
And we got a taste of Stoicism, the philosophy that, guided him.
Exactly.
Now, let's actually dig into letters,
Okay, let's do it.
uncover those nuggets of wisdom that he's so famous for.
One thing that really jumps out at you when you read his letters is how practical his advice is.
Oh, yeah.
He's not just talking about theories.
Right.
He's giving you real guidance on how to live a better life.
So less like armchair philosophy and more like what do they call it?
The life coach. Yeah.
Like a life coach from ancient Rome.
Exactly. And one of the things he talks about a lot, which is super relevant today, is dealing with anger.
Ooh, anger management.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could all use a little bit of that.
Right. Especially these days.
It's like everything is so go, always connected.
Totally. And Seneca realized way back then that anger can be really destructive,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's a totally normal human emotion.
So what was his, approach? Did he have any ancient Roman anger management techniques?
Well, he didn't exactly tell people to, take deep breaths or count to 10.
Mm-hmm.
But what he focused on was understanding why we get angry in the first place.
Okay, so getting to the root of it.
Yeah. And then coming up with strategies to prevent it.
So it's not about, bottling it up. It's more about figuring out the why.
Exactly. He thought a lot of our anger comes from expectations that are just, not realistic.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
We get mad because we think we can control things that we actually can't, like what other people do or unexpected events.
Yeah, or even the weather, right.
Totally. It's like that famous saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Right. Acceptance is key.
Seneca was all about that, accepting what you can't control and focusing on what you can.
Which is basically our own reactions, right?
Our thoughts are reactions. That's it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's less about suppressing the feeling and more about changing our perspective on the things that make us angry.
Right. And he also said that anger often comes from a warped view of what's actually important.
So getting all worked up over a traffic jam when, in the grand scheme of things...
It's really not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
He's always reminding us to keep things in perspective. Ask yourself, is this really worth getting upset about?
Right. And speaking of perspective, Seneca was also very aware of the fact that, time is precious.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He knew we only have a limited amount of it.
Yeah. And that comes through in his writing, right?
It really does. He's always encouraging us to make the most of the time we have, to not waste it on stuff that doesn't matter.
But he wasn't saying we should all just become workaholics, right? There's got to be room for fun in life, too.
Of course. He believed in enjoying life's pleasures, but doing it with, awareness.
So enjoying things, but not letting them, take over.
Exactly. Choose things that align with your values, things that bring you genuine joy, things that contribute to your well-being.
Okay, so it's kind of like being mindful about how we spend our time and energy.
That's it. And that brings us to another big theme in Seneca's letters, the pursuit of happiness. But for him, happiness wasn't about external stuff.
Not about the money or the fancy things.
No, it wasn't about wealth or status. It was about something deeper.
Deeper, okay.
True happiness, or what the Stoics called eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia.
It comes from living a virtuous life.
Virtuous.
It's about doing things that match your values,
Right.
Finding that contentment within yourself.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking that happiness is about getting more stuff or achieving some goal.
I know, right?
But Seneca's saying it's about something much more internal. It's more about who we are, not what we have.
Absolutely. And he emphasizes that this kind of happiness is not about denying your emotions
Okay, good.
or living a life of total self-denial. It's about finding a balance
Balance, okay.
between our desires and our rational selves, between enjoying life and staying true to who we are.
So not a life of deprivation, but a life of mindful enjoyment.
Precisely. And he also thought happiness wasn't some distant goal.
Oh, okay.
It was something we could cultivate right here, right now.
So finding joy in the everyday, in those simple moments, in the connections we have with other people.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important theme in Seneca's letters, which might seem a bit surprising given all this talk about self-sufficiency.
Okay, what is it?
Friendship.
Yes. Friendship. He really valued those close connections, right?
He did. He saw true friendship as a source of strength, of comfort.
Yeah.
Even a way to, transcend death.
Whoa, okay, that's a big one.
He thought that sharing our lives with other people, supporting each other, that it could make life richer and make the pain of loss a little easier to bear.
And he wasn't talking about those surface-level friendships, right?
Right.
He meant those deep, meaningful connections.
The ones that challenge you to grow.
The ones that make you a better person.
Exactly. He thought that real friends should inspire us to be better, to be more virtuous.
Okay, so challenge you in a good way.
Yes. To be there for each other
Yeah.
and to celebrate each other's successes.
Right.
He even said that with true friends, we don't die, we pass on.
Whoa. So those connections go beyond death.
That's the idea. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It shows that even for a Stoic like Seneca, those human connections were super important.
Absolutely. And don't forget, he was writing these letters to his good friend Lucilius.
Right.
So he was living this idea of friendship.
So we've talked about anger, time, happiness, friendship. But Seneca wasn't just this super serious philosopher, right?
Definitely not.
Didn't he have a pretty good sense of humor?
He did. He was very witty. He was a keen observer of human nature, too.
Yeah, I could see that in his writing.
And his humor often pointed out, human folly.
Like our little quirks and contradictions.
Exactly. The things that make us both, endearing and frustrated.
Oh, totally.
Like that passage where he describes the party scene at Baiae. It's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, that one.
It's like ancient Roman spring break.
Totally.
He's poking fun at the extravagance, the noise, the people chasing after all this fleeting pleasures.
Yeah, it's like you can picture him just rolling his eyes,
No, come on, people.
Or that time he talked about people who collect tons of books but never read them.
Oh, yeah, that's classic.
That's a timeless one. People have been doing that forever.
It is. And Seneca's ability to capture those little absurdities with that mix of wit and wisdom, it's part of what makes him so relatable.
So not just some philosopher preaching from up high.
Nope.
He gets us.
Yeah.
He understood human weaknesses. He could laugh at them, but he also encouraged us to try to be better.
Exactly. And it's this blend of serious philosophy and relatable human observations that makes Seneca so compelling, I think. He speaks to us on a different level,
Yeah, it's like across time.
Even after all these centuries.
Okay, so we've gone through some of Seneca's main insights on tough emotions, appreciating time, finding happiness, building friendships. And we've seen how he did it all with this sharp wit and a deep understanding of human nature.
He was a smart guy.
But there's one really key part of his philosophy we haven't really talked about yet.
What's that?
Taking action.
Oh, yes. That's crucial. For Seneca, it wasn't enough to just understand these ideas.
Right.
You got to live them.
Walk the walk.
Exactly. He famously said, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste a lot of it.
Oh, wow.
So it's not about knowing what's right, it's about doing what's right.
Putting it into practice.
Precisely. He wanted us to really embody virtue in our lives, to make choices that reflect our understanding of philosophy.
So no armchair Stoics allowed.
Nope.
get out there and live it.
But how do we actually do that? What are the, concrete steps to put Seneca's wisdom into practice?
Okay, welcome back to our Seneca Deep Dive. We've covered his life, stoicism, and all these amazing insights on how to actually live a better life.
Right, practical philosophy.
But now I'm thinking about the how. It's one thing to get these ideas, but how do we put them into practice?
That's the big question, right. And Seneca doesn't just leave us hanging. He gives some really good guidance on how to take philosophy and make it, action.
Less theory, more doing. So give us the Seneca action plan. Where do we even start?
Well, he was really big on self-reflection. He thought that taking time to really examine your thoughts, your motivations, what you do, that was crucial for growing as a person.
So it's that classic know yourself idea.
Yeah.
But Seneca's take it a step further. Don't just understand yourself, work on yourself.
Exactly. He saw self-reflection as a tool. You use it to see your weaknesses, and then you take steps to overcome them.
It's like constantly working to be better.
Yeah. Always improving yourself. Becoming the best you can be.
But being honest. Self-reflection can be kind of tough. It's not always fun to face your flaws.
You're right, it can be uncomfortable. But Seneca thought it was totally essential for living a virtuous life. He even said we should do it every day.
Like a daily habit.
Yeah, every day acquire something to make you stronger. Stronger against poverty, death, those kinds of misfortunes.
So a daily workout, but for your mind. Building resilience.
That's the idea. And for Seneca, improving yourself, it was directly connected to finding your purpose in life.
Okay, purpose.
He believed we all have this duty to contribute to the good of everyone, make the world a better place.
Okay, but we're not all going to be, emperors or senators like Seneca was. Does that mean we can't live a meaningful life?
No, not at all. Seneca thought purpose could be, it can look different for everyone. It could be your relationships, your work, anything creative you do.
Yeah.
Even just being kind to people. The key is to do things with intention. Choose things that are aligned with your values, things that contribute to something bigger than just you.
So like raising a family or volunteering, even just being a good friend. Those all count.
Absolutely. And for Seneca, that sense of purpose, that connection to something bigger, it was part of what made people truly happy.
It makes sense when you think about it. When your life has meaning, when you're part of something bigger.
Yeah.
That brings a satisfaction that you can't buy.
Okay, you got it. And Seneca's own life, it really shows this idea. He could have just enjoyed his wealth and position, right?
Yeah.
But he chose to write, to teach, to be a mentor. He wanted to leave the world a little better.
So he was all about action, not just words. And speaking of action, Seneca was also big on facing your fears. Really facing them.
Head on. He did not believe in letting fear hold you back from living a full life.
He knew that everyone feels fear, right? It's normal.
Of course, it's human nature.
Yeah.
But he didn't want us to be controlled by it. He said, look at your fears, think about them rationally, and then act anyway.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly. Acknowledge it, but don't let it run the show.
I like that. So taking risks, trying things even when they're scary.
That's part of what makes you really alive. And he saw that willingness to get out of your comfort zone, to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
That's how you develop courage and resilience. It builds strong character.
Wow, we've really gone through a lot today. We've got Seneca's life, stoicism, all these great insights on living better. And they still ring true today, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
But if we had to pick, one main takeaway, what would it be?
I think the core message of what Seneca's saying is this. A good life is a life where you make conscious choices. It's about matching what you do with what you believe, striving to be excellent, and knowing that real happiness, real fulfillment, it comes from inside you, not from things outside.
It's about taking control of your life
right
now and making decisions that show what you truly value. And it's a journey, not a finish line. Always learning, always growing, always trying to be better.
That's beautifully put. And as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with this quote from Seneca. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last by death's final constraint to realize that it has passed away before we knew it was passing.
So, go out there. Remember what Seneca said. Make the most of your time. Live with purpose. And never stop trying to be the best version of yourself. Thanks for joining us on this Seneca Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.
All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into some ancient wisdom, Seneca's letters from a Stoic.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, letters.
Right.
How exciting can that be? But trust me, these aren't your average notes from grandma.
What's captivating about these letters is that they're personal.
Right.
And Seneca's not like laying down the law or anything.
Yeah.
He's writing to a friend, Lucilius, offering advice, reflecting on how to live a good life.
Yeah.
Like how to actually live a good life based on Stoic principles.
Yeah.
It's like we're eavesdropping on their private conversation.
Oh, totally.
About, navigating life and everything.
Yeah, and Seneca doesn't shy away from the big questions.
No, not at all.
Overcoming fear, finding happiness, the purpose of life.
Yeah.
And the importance of friendship.
Absolutely.
Like, these are themes that still resonate with us today.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the most striking things is how much Seneca emphasizes living in accordance with nature.
Okay, so not necessarily building a cabin in the woods.
Right. Although
Not tempting.
It's tempting. But more like understanding the natural order of things and using that as a guide for how we live our lives.
So like taking cues from nature's simplicity.
Yes.
Resilience, interconnectedness.
Precisely. And that leads directly into his ideas about wealth.
Okay.
And what it really means to be rich. Seneca argues that true freedom comes not from possessions, but from liberating ourselves from their hold.
Interesting.
He says, it is not the man who has too little,
right,
but the man who craves more, that is poor.
That's such a powerful statement.
Isn't it?
It really makes you think about all the things we chase after thinking they'll bring us happiness, when real contentment might just be being content with what we already have.
Exactly. And to illustrate this, Seneca shares a story about Attalus, a wealthy Roman who was invited to see a display of the Roman Empire's riches.
Oh, wow.
Gold, jewels, priceless artifacts, everything.
So he must have been thrilled.
You'd think so, but instead, Attalus was deeply troubled by it.
Oh, wow. So what was it about all that wealth that bothered him?
He realized that despite the splendor, it was all fleeting. Couldn't guarantee happiness,
Right.
He saw how easily it could be lost, stolen, or even become a burden.
I see. Yeah.
It was a reminder that true wealth is being content with little and finding joy in the things that can't be taken away.
Right. So I'm seeing how this connects back to that idea of living in accordance with nature. It's recognizing that abundance comes from within, not from external things.
Right.
And Seneca, he takes this even further.
Yes, he does.
He even cautions against places like Baia, this luxurious Roman resort town.
Yeah, known for, its extravagance.
Right.
And let's just say less than virtuous pursuits.
Okay, so...
Too much of a good thing.
He compares it to the comforts of Campania that weakened Hannibal and his army.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it's like he's saying too much comfort and luxury can actually make us weaker.
Yeah, less resilient.
Exactly.
More susceptible to vices.
And this ties directly into his ideas about facing fear.
Okay.
Particularly the fear of death.
Okay.
Which he argues is the ultimate liberator.
Now that sounds a little paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it?
How can death be liberating?
Well, Seneca believed that the fear of death holds us captive, prevents us from truly living.
Okay.
He writes, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man."
Wow.
He doesn't try to sugarcoat death or diminish its gravity.
Yeah.
But he encourages us to accept it.
Okay.
And use it as motivation to live fully and virtuously.
So to not let fear paralyze us,
exactly,
but use it to live a life of meaning and purpose.
Precisely.
He even uses the example of
the Spartan boy who chose death over slavery.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely thought-provoking.
It underscores that freedom from fear, even through death, is always an option. We have the power to choose how we respond to any circumstance.
And this is where Seneca's ideas about true friendship become so important.
Absolutely. He believed that true friends are a source of strength and support.
Yeah.
They help us face life's challenges with courage and resilience.
It's like having your own personal philosophical cheer squad.
I like that.
But he contrasts these genuine connections with the shallow relationships often found in places like Baia.
Baia, he saw it as a breeding ground for superficiality, where people were more concerned with appearances than genuine connection.
Right. So he's saying go for quality over quantity
Exactly.
when it comes to your relationships.
Absolutely.
I can see how that relates back to
Yeah.
living in accordance with nature.
Mm.
It's seeking what's genuine and substantial.
Exactly.
Rather than chasing fleeting pleasures and external validation.
It's about finding joy in things that have real depth and meaning.
And this brings us to what might be the most potent takeaway.
Oh, tell me more.
Seneca's belief in self-reflection and moral improvement.
He's not just saying be a good person.
No.
He's talking about actively examining your thoughts, motivations, and actions.
Right.
Making a conscious effort to align them with your values.
It's like he's challenging us to be our own life coaches,
I like that.
constantly analyzing and refining our approach to life.
And this is where his concept of precepts comes in.
Okay, now that's a term I'm not familiar with.
Oh, right.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, precepts are essentially moral guidelines,
Okay.
rules for good conduct.
Yeah.
You know, they're like a moral compass, helping us navigate difficult situations
Right.
and make choices that are aligned with our values.
So it's like a set of guiding principles
Exactly.
to help us when we're facing a dilemma or a tough decision.
He argued that these precepts are essential for moral development, especially for those still on their journey toward wisdom.
Okay.
He even disagreed with the philosopher Ariston,
Okay.
who dismissed the usefulness of this kind of moral instruction.
Interesting. Why would he reject that?
Well, Ariston believed that true virtue came from within, like an innate understanding of right and wrong.
So he's saying we should just trust our gut
Kind of.
when it comes to morality.
But Seneca saw it differently.
Okay, I'm curious to hear his perspective.
He believed that while we may have an inherent sense of right and wrong,
Yeah.
we still need guidance and instruction to develop and refine our moral compass.
I see.
Precepts provide a framework for understanding our duties
Okay.
and help us make virtuous choices in complex situations.
So like a roadmap
Exactly.
for the ethical landscape.
I like that. And Seneca believed that precepts are especially valuable for those who are still learning.
Right, those who haven't quite reached that level of, wisdom and moral intuition.
Exactly. It's like learning any new skill. You need instruction and practice
Oh, totally.
before you can master it.
And Seneca believed that precepts, along with good examples,
Yes.
could help people from all walks of life move towards a life of virtue,
Absolutely.
even those,
Yeah.
deeply entrenched in vice.
He was a firm believer in the power of transformation.
That's a powerful message
It is, isn't it?
of hope and possibility.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of wisdom and virtue is a lifelong journey.
I love that.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off, striving for some unattainable perfection,
Exactly.
and focuses on,
Yeah.
the
An
progress.
ongoing process of learning and growth.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Seneca's letters so enduring. He doesn't offer easy answers.
Right.
He invites us to engage in a lifelong exploration of what it means to live a good life.
It's like having a wise friend, offering guidance and support as we navigate life's ups and downs.
And that's why his work continues to resonate with people centuries later.
Yeah.
His wisdom feels timeless and universal.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
I know, right?
There's so much more to unpack
So much more.
in Seneca's letters from a Stoic.
But before we dive into the next section,
Yeah.
what stands out to you so far?
Honestly, I'm struck by
Yeah.
his emphasis on choosing a life of simplicity and focusing on what's truly essential.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful antidote
It is.
to the pressure we face today to acquire more, achieve more,
Right.
and constantly be striving for something
Yeah.
beyond what we already have.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that true happiness
Mm-hmm.
might be closer than we think.
I love that. That's a great insight.
Yeah.
And I think it leads perfectly into our next discussion
Okay.
on how Seneca applied these principles to his own life,
All right.
especially his thoughts on friendship.
Let's do it.
All right. You know, it's fascinating how Seneca's ideas about simple living and focusing on essentials,
Yeah.
it ties into his views on friendship.
It's interesting you say that because I was just thinking about
Yeah.
his warnings against the superficiality of places like Bahia.
Right.
It's like he's also saying don't settle for shallow connections
Exactly.
when you can have something real and meaningful.
He says that true friends can help us face difficult times,
Yeah.
even death,
Wow.
with greater ease.
Okay.
He writes, "The comfort of having a friend may be taken away,
Right.
but not that of having had one."
That's a really poignant statement.
It is.
It highlights how the impact of true friendship, it goes beyond just the time we spend with people.
Yeah.
It shapes who we are and how we experience life,
Absolutely.
even in their absence.
And it wasn't just theoretical for Seneca.
Right.
He found comfort in the company of his friends.
Yeah.
Especially when he was ill.
During times of illness.
In one letter, he describes how their presence brought him comfort and joy, even when he was suffering physically.
It's a testament to the healing power of human connection.
It is.
Makes you think about the role our relationships play in our well-being.
Yeah.
Not just emotionally, but even physically.
I completely agree. And this is where Seneca contrasts true friendship with those superficial relationships in places like Baya.
Right. He saw those social circles as being more about appearances and status.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He believed those types of relationships.
Yeah.
They lack genuine depth.
Right.
And can actually make us feel more isolated.
Interesting.
He writes, there is no good in a crowd.
So it's a reminder to be discerning about who we spend our time with.
And to prioritize quality over quantity.
It's easy to get caught up in having a large social network.
It is.
But what really matters are those few deep connections that really nourish us.
And for Seneca, those connections weren't just about good times or support during tough times. He believed they challenge us to grow.
Okay.
And help us become better versions of ourselves.
So it's not just about people who make us feel good.
No.
But people who push us to be better, to live more virtuously.
Exactly. He saw true friends as mirrors.
Interesting.
Reflecting back our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
He says, the friend is a second self.
It's a beautiful way to describe that trust and understanding, like a built-in accountability partner for personal growth.
Right. Someone who calls you out when you stray from your values.
Right.
And celebrates your victories.
But that honesty and vulnerability only come when we feel truly seen and accepted.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to self-reflection and moral improvement.
It's all interconnected.
Can't have one without the other.
And speaking of self-reflection, Seneca had some thoughts about how we can actually do it.
I'm all ears. This is something I've been struggling with.
Yeah.
How to make self-reflection a more consistent practice.
He believed we shouldn't wait for a crisis to prompt self-reflection.
Okay.
We should make it a daily practice.
Like a mental check-in.
Exactly. He suggested setting aside time each day to reflect on our actions, thoughts, and progress towards living a virtuous life.
Right.
He writes, every night before going to sleep, we should ask ourselves, what weakness did I overcome today?
Okay.
What virtue did I acquire?
Interesting practice. It forces you to really examine your day.
It's a way to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
Be more intentional about our choices.
Right.
So by consistently examining ourselves, we become more aware of our patterns, tendencies, and the things that hold us back.
And once we identify those roadblocks, we can start to dismantle them.
Precisely. Seneca believed awareness is the first step to transformation. He writes, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Wow.
A reminder that growth requires honesty with ourselves about our strengths and weaknesses, willingness to do the work.
And that work isn't always easy.
It's not. There's a lot of resistance when we confront our flaws.
Absolutely.
But Seneca believed that facing our imperfections with courage and honesty is essential for growth.
Okay.
He writes, we are all wicked. Whatever one of us accuses another of, we must all accuse ourselves of.
It's a humbling reminder that we're all works in progress.
And this ties back to living in accordance with nature.
Okay.
Just as nature is constantly evolving, so too should we be.
Right.
Growth and change are inherent parts of the human experience.
Yeah, instead of beating ourselves up for our imperfections, we can see them as opportunities for growth.
Embrace that growth, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what allows us to become more ourselves.
More fully ourselves.
Live more fulfilling lives.
And it makes me think about how Seneca saw pursuing virtue as an ongoing journey, not a destination, continuously striving to be better.
Not about achieving perfection.
And he believed anyone could embark on this journey.
Regardless of their past or current circumstance.
He even argued that those deep in vice could transform their lives and become virtuous.
With effort and the right guidance.
It's never too late to start working on ourselves.
That's the message of hope.
And striving to live by our values.
Exactly. And this leads perfectly into Seneca's views on living well, understanding the value of our time, making the most of each day.
He had a lot to say about that.
He did.
Especially about the shortness of life and how we waste so much time on things that don't matter.
He didn't mince words. He said, it is not that we have a short time to live,
right,
but that we waste a lot of it.
That's a great quote.
It is.
It's so easy to lose sight of what truly matters.
And this is where self-reflection comes in.
Okay.
If we're not examining our priorities and habits, it's easy to fall into patterns that don't serve us.
So self-reflection is like a course correction.
I love that analogy.
About our lives.
It's about checking in with ourselves.
Right.
Making sure we're on the right path.
Yeah.
And making adjustments if we're not.
Seneca believed we have more control over our time than we realize.
The key is to use that time wisely.
I'm ready to learn more about this because I think it's something we can all benefit from.
Absolutely.
Especially in our fast-paced world.
Let's delve into Seneca's perspective on the shortness of life.
Okay.
And how we can make the most of the time we have.
It's funny how, even though Seneca lived so long ago, his concerns about wasting time still feel so relevant today.
I know, right?
Like, we have more tools than ever to help us manage our time, but we still feel overwhelmed. And like we're not making the most of each day.
It's like the more ways we have to spend our time, the less we actually value it.
Right.
Seneca's very aware of that, that tendency to just waste time.
He had some pretty strong opinions about it.
Oh, yeah, he didn't hold back.
He said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
He wasn't concerned with, like, living longer.
Right.
He wanted us to live better.
To make the most of the time we have.
Exactly. Invest it wisely.
Like it's a precious commodity.
Exactly.
So stop worrying about how much time you have. Focus on how you're using it.
And that's where his ideas about death come in.
Okay.
Not obsessing over it.
Right.
But accepting it.
Acknowledging it.
Yeah. He believed that by accepting our mortality, we could live more fully.
In present.
In the present moment, he writes, let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time.
I love that.
Yeah.
Balancing life's books each day.
Me too, good one.
It makes it feel more practical somehow.
Right.
Less theoretical.
And he even suggests a thought experiment.
Okay.
Living each day as if it were your last.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
But does that really mean we should quit our jobs and go skydiving?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's more about having the right mindset.
Okay.
Gratitude, urgency.
Okay.
He wanted us to see how precious each day is.
So it's more about asking ourselves, if this were my last day, would I be doing this?
Exactly.
Would I be spending my time this way?
It's a way to check in with your priorities. Make sure you're living by your values.
To be present.
To be present. Savor the little things.
Yeah.
Appreciate the beauty around us.
I can see how that would make for a more fulfilling life.
And remember, Seneca walked the walk? He had a friend, Pacuvius, who would celebrate his own funeral every day.
Okay, now that's a little morbid.
It sounds strange.
Yeah.
But it was a way to remember that life is short.
Okay, so not about death, but about appreciating life.
Right. Living with intention.
Yeah, because it could be your last day.
Every day is a gift.
And we can't get back the days we waste.
He wrote, putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes and denies us the present by promising the future.
So procrastination really is the thief of time.
It is.
And the best time to start living is now.
It's so easy to put things off.
And I know, I'm guilty of it too.
We all are.
Thinking, I'll start living my best life tomorrow.
Or next week.
Yeah, next year.
But tomorrow is not guaranteed.
The only moment we have is now.
That's the beauty of Seneca's teachings. It's not just about understanding life.
Right.
It's about changing how we live.
Right now. He's giving us a practical guide to a better life.
I think that's a great way to sum it up.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
From overcoming fear to embracing simplicity, making each day count.
Seneca's insights are so relevant today.
He challenges us to be more mindful, more intentional, and more courageous.
And he reminds us that true happiness is about the choices we make.
The values we live by.
And the connections we forge.
I hope this deep dive has inspired you to read Seneca's letters for yourself.
Yeah, his ancient wisdom is surprisingly relevant to our modern lives.
You might be surprised.
So until next time, remember Seneca's words.
Okay.
Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life.
A powerful message.
Embrace the present moment and live each day as a gift.
Because it truly is. Welcome back for another deep dive.
It's hard to believe we're nearing the end of our exploration of Seneca.
I know, right? It's our penultimate episode. But we've still got a lot to unpack.
Absolutely.
So for anyone just joining us, Seneca, just to recap, was this Roman Stoic philosopher, playwright?
Oh, and advisor to Nero, don't forget.
Right, of course. Advisor to Nero, living through some seriously turbulent times.
Talk about real-world experience with adversity.
Exactly, which is what we're diving into today. Seneca's teachings on how to overcome suffering, misfortune.
All the curveballs life throws at you.
Exactly.
And he had a lot to say about that.
He did. And one of the things that always strikes me is how head-on he tackles the idea of death.
Oh, he doesn't shy away from it, that's for sure.
Not at all. Like, he flat out says, we're dying every day, and we should accept it as a natural part of life.
Instead of fearing it, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, why waste energy on something that's inevitable?
And that fear, he argues, it just robs us of the joy of living.
It's a pretty powerful shift in perspective. And he has this really vivid analogy to illustrate it.
Oh, you mean the one with the circles?
Yeah. He compares life to a series of circles, with death as the outermost one, encompassing all the others.
It's like he's showing us that death isn't separate from life. It's woven into the very fabric of it.
It's a great image, right. And it helps to kind of reframe how we think about death.
Instead of dreading that outer circle, we can focus on living fully within the circles we're currently in.
I like that.
It makes you appreciate each moment more.
It really does.
And he even uses the story of another philosopher, Aufidius Bessus, to drive this point home.
Oh, yeah, the Epicurean on his deathbed.
Right. And even though Bessus was from a different school of thought, he had a very similar view on death.
That it's nothing to fear.
Yeah, because it's beyond feeling, beyond any sensation.
It's like a final release.
A peaceful ending.
And I think it's interesting that Seneca, a Stoic, uses an Epicurean to illustrate this point.
It shows that there's common ground between these different philosophies, right?
Absolutely. I mean, wisdom can come from anywhere.
Exactly.
So this brings us to you, the listener.
How does this Stoic perspective on death resonate with you?
Does it change how you think about your own life, your own choices?
It's a big question, but it's worth considering.
It is.
And it leads us to another important theme in Seneca's work: how to conquer fear and anxiety.
Because, let's face it, we all deal with those.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Seneca argues that a lot of our suffering comes from worrying about the future.
Or dwelling on the past.
Right. It's like we're borrowing trouble.
Borrowing trouble, I like that.
From tomorrow and holding on to yesterday's pain.
And most of the things we worry about, they never even happen.
It's true.
And that dwelling on the past, it just prevents us from being present in the moment.
So is he basically saying just live in the now?
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Because Seneca also talks about how true joy isn't just about seeking pleasure.
No, it's about mental strength, confidence.
Not just chasing those fleeting external highs.
Exactly. He's talking about a deeper, more resilient kind of joy that comes from within.
So how do we cultivate that?
He suggests focusing on what we can control. Our thoughts, our actions, our reactions.
And letting go of the things we can't control.
Right, because those external things, they can be taken away so easily.
He even calls them treacherous goods, the things that look amazing in anticipation, but end up leaving us empty.
You're just like chasing a mirage.
It's like he's saying, don't get caught up in the need for external validation.
Or material possessions.
Or anything that's outside of your own inner sphere.
Because true happiness, it comes from within.
And he uses these great stories to illustrate his points.
Oh, I love his stories.
Me too. Like there's one about this guy with a wounded leg who boasted about his divine lineage.
Until his injury forced him to confront his human vulnerability.
Right. It's funny, but it also makes you think.
It reminds us that we're all human, we're all vulnerable.
And accepting that can actually be a source of strength.
So here's a question for you, the listener.
What worries you the most?
And how might Seneca's advice on fear and anxiety help you approach those worries differently?
It's worth thinking about.
It really is. Now, it's not about just passively accepting whatever happens, is it?
No, definitely not.
Seneca was all about action.
Yeah. He really believed in taking charge of your own life.
And for him, that meant cultivating inner strengths.
And virtue, right.
Right. He saw those as the keys to overcoming adversity.
So it's not just about enduring hardship. It's about using it to grow.
Exactly. And for Seneca, virtue was the ultimate good, the only true path to lasting happiness.
Interesting.
And he uses this powerful image to illustrate it, this idea of a wounded soldier.
What? Like, even though he's injured, he keeps fighting?
Yeah, he's wounded, but he still fights bravely.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It really captures that spirit of resilience even when you're facing immense challenges.
And that ties in with the Stoic concept of indifference, right?
Exactly. The things that are outside our control, like wealth, health, reputation.
External stuff.
Right. Seneca says we shouldn't let those things dictate our happiness.
Because they can change so easily.
Yeah, they're fleeting.
So instead of getting caught up in circumstances we can't control, we should focus on our character.
And our choices.
The things we can actually shape.
Exactly. It's about focusing on what you can influence.
And this leads to one of Seneca's most famous quotes. The mind is more powerful than every act of fortune.
Powerful stuff.
It is. It's like he's saying, even when things feel chaotic, you still have agency.
You can choose how you respond.
It's a very empowering message.
It is.
So for you, the listener, how do you define inner strength?
What steps can you take to cultivate it?
What practices or habits help you stay grounded when things get tough?
These are all good questions to consider.
Definitely.
And along with this focus on inner strength, Seneca was a huge advocate for philosophy as a path to freedom.
Not just studying it, but actually living it.
Right. He saw philosophy as a tool for self-discovery.
A way to understand yourself better.
And to break free from those harmful desires that can hold us back.
And ultimately to live in harmony with nature, with the way things are.
It's about finding that inner peace, that sense of alignment.
So how do we make sure philosophy isn't just something we read about, but something that actually shapes our lives?
Well, Seneca has some advice for that too.
What's that?
He tells us to sound the retreat from the things that merely glitter.
What does he mean by that?
He's saying, turn inward, focus on introspection.
Instead of getting swept away by all the external noise and distractions.
Exactly, which is so hard these days with everything competing for our attention.
It's true, there's so much stimulation all the time.
And to really highlight the danger of chasing external success without cultivating that inner peace, Seneca tells this story of Alexander the Great.
Oh, the guy who conquered like half the world.
Yeah. But even with all his accomplishments, he was consumed by ambition, driven to ruin.
It's a classic case of having it all but still feeling empty.
Right. So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
How do we make sure we're pursuing the right kind of success?
That's where philosophy comes in.
How so?
It helps us define what truly matters.
And to stay grounded amidst all the allure of achievement and external validation.
Exactly. It provides that inner compass.
So, listener, how has engaging with philosophical ideas, even in small ways, impacted your life?
Has it helped you define what truly matters to you?
That's something to think about. You know, it's funny. I was just thinking about how Seneca manages to be both like incredibly practical and aspirational at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. Like he gives you this concrete advice on how to live better.
Right. But then he also pushes you to aim for something higher.
A kind of transcendence almost.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't pretend that life is easy.
No, he acknowledges the struggles.
But he always shows you a way forward, a way to deal with those challenges.
With grace, even.
And that brings us back to this idea of overcoming adversity, right?
Because for Seneca, true freedom.
It comes from mastering your own mind.
Yeah, aligning your thoughts and actions with reason and virtue.
He's basically saying that while you can't control what happens to you,
you can control how you react.
You can control your inner world, your character.
Life's going to throw you curveballs.
But you get to decide how you swing at them.
You can let those challenges break you.
Or you can use them to become stronger.
Wiser, more resilient.
And that choice, that inner freedom,
it's available to everyone.
No matter what their external circumstances are like.
It's a pretty powerful message.
It is.
Well, that brings us to the end of our penultimate deep dive into Seneca.
Time flies, huh?
It does. We've covered a lot of ground today, from his views on death and fear
to the importance of inner strength
and finding freedom through philosophy.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And I hope you've all found something in Seneca's wisdom.
Something to resonate with you, something to take away.
Something to inspire you on your own path.
As Seneca might say, go forth and live your philosophy.
Yeah. Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep diving deep. Welcome back. It feels like we've been with Seneca forever.
I know, right?
spending all this time in his letters.
Like peering into ancient Rome.
Exactly. But this is it.
Our final deep dive.
Into Seneca's wisdom.
And this time,
we're getting practical.
How can Seneca's ideas actually help us?
In our everyday lives.
It's amazing how relevant he still feels.
Right. Like he's speaking directly to us.
Across the centuries.
You know, I was thinking about letter 110.
The one with Attalus?
Yes. The procession of Roman wealth.
All that gold and silver on display?
Seneca describes it so vividly.
You can almost hear the chariots rumbling.
And what struck me was Attalus's reaction.
He wasn't impressed at all.
Almost disgusted, you could say.
He says those riches, they're displayed, not possessed.
Wow.
It's like the stuff owns the people.
That's deep.
It's that stoic core, isn't it?
Totally.
It's not about being poor.
No, not at all.
But it's a reminder.
About what matters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Happiness isn't about stuff.
Makes you think about our own obsessions.
Our must-have mentality.
Do we really need all this stuff?
Or is it just a distraction?
From what truly matters.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Seneca challenges us.
To define what's really necessary.
Not just food and shelter.
But what feeds our souls.
But gives our lives purpose.
It's different for everyone.
Of course.
But the self-examination is crucial.
Okay, so let's say we've decluttered.
Focused on the essentials.
But life isn't always easy.
Right. Seneca knew that firsthand.
Chronic illness, political turmoil.
He faced it all.
And in letter 77...
Ah, yes.
He tells that incredible story.
Remind me.
The Spartan boy captured in battle.
Oh, right.
Given a choice, slavery or death.
A brutal choice.
The boy chooses death.
Without hesitation.
Powerful stuff.
It highlights Seneca's belief
in facing hardship head on.
With unwavering spirit.
It makes you think about our own battles.
Maybe not life or death.
But those moments when we want to quit.
Take the easy way out.
Seneca reminds us we have a choice.
Even when things are tough.
We can choose our response.
Find inner strength. And this connects to his views on death.
Something he talks about a lot.
Right. He doesn't shy away from it.
For Seneca, death is natural.
Part of life.
Not something to be feared.
In letter 78.
While he's talking about his illness,
yeah,
he finds solace in philosophy.
And in his friends.
Knowing death is inevitable.
It doesn't diminish the meaning we create.
There's a strange comfort in that.
A sense of perspective.
We're all in this together.
Facing the same end.
It takes the pressure off.
Allows us to focus on living fully.
Right here, right now.
Absolutely. And speaking of action.
Yeah.
Seneca was all about self-reflection.
And honest feedback.
Right. He didn't mince words about that.
In letter 94, he basically tells us to be wary
of people who only praise us.
He believed in true friends.
Those who offer constructive criticism.
Even if it stings.
Because they want us to grow.
It's that stoic self-awareness.
Not dwelling on flaws.
But acknowledging them.
To become better.
It's like a personal trainer for the soul.
Pushing us to level up.
I've been thinking about this lately.
Really?
Am I surrounding myself with the right people?
Those who challenge you.
Or just those who tell me what I want to hear?
Because sometimes a little tough love is what we need.
It's a good question to ask.
Am I open to hearing the truth?
Even when it's uncomfortable.
That's where the real growth happens.
In Seneca.
He really knew how to push our buttons.
Right. He had this knack.
For what?
For pointing out those tricky parts of us.
Like what?
Our tendency to get caught up in anxieties about the future.
Oh, yeah.
Letter 13 comes to mind.
What did he say?
He warns us we suffer more.
Than we need to.
In anticipation of misfortune.
So true.
We build up these scenarios in our mind.
Creating anxieties.
That have no basis in reality.
It's that stoic principle again.
Focusing on what's in our control.
You can't predict the future.
But we can choose how we react. Seneca tells us to let go.
Of anxieties about things we can't control.
And focus our energy
on what we care.
Our thoughts, actions, and responses.
To whatever life throws our way.
It's about being mindful.
Being present in the moment.
Instead of letting our minds race ahead.
To all the what-ifs.
Seneca's reminding us to savor the good.
Then face the challenges with courage.
And resilience.
Absolutely. And when those challenges hit.
Yeah.
Remember Seneca's belief in friendship.
And mentorship.
Such a crucial part of his philosophy.
It's all over his letters to Lucilius.
He considered those relationships essential.
Not just for emotional support.
But for moral and intellectual growth.
In letter 78, he talks about his friends.
helping him through his illness.
Providing comfort and perspective.
It's more than just having buddies.
Right. It's about actively seeking out
people who embody the virtues we admire.
those who inspire us to be better.
Seneca saw this as crucial for a good life.
Surrounding ourselves with the right people.
Who are those people for you?
It's a great question.
What qualities do you admire in others?
And how can you cultivate those in yourself?
It's a powerful reflection
It makes you think about the impact.
of the people we surround ourselves with.
It really does.
And
Yeah.
this leads us to another key idea from Seneca, living in accordance with nature.
That sounds a bit abstract.
What do you think he meant by that?
Good question.
Well, for Seneca,
Yeah.
it's about understanding our place
In the world,
in the grand scheme of things,
we're all connected.
part of a larger web of life.
So it's about more than just hiking in trees.
It's about a mindset of
Wow.
acceptance.
Accepting what?
That life, like nature,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
full of beauty and hardship,
And we have to navigate both.
with grace and resilience,
Finding that sweet spot
where we can enjoy life's pleasures,
without being consumed by them.
facing challenges with courage,
Without becoming hardened,
finding contentment in the present.
but not becoming complacent.
Seneca really had a way with words.
Distilling complex ideas into simple truths.
But the question is,
Yeah.
how do we actually apply this?
To our everyday lives.
That's what we're here to explore.
Stay with us.
We're just getting started. Okay, so we've talked about finding contentment
Yeah.
amidst all the external chaos,
Right.
accepting what we can't control.
The Stoic approach.
But what about the things we can influence?
Our own actions, habits.
How we spend our time.
Time.
Precious time.
That's where Seneca really gets me.
How so?
It's like he's got this superpower
What superpower?
to see right through my procrastination.
He calls us out on it, that's for sure.
Remember in letter 13?
Vaguely.
He basically says, don't wait till you're on your deathbed to start living.
It's a bit blunt.
Morbid, even.
But effective.
Right. It makes you think.
And what's interesting is that he doesn't just scold us.
For wasting time.
He actually gives us a framework
For
making the most of it.
Okay, I'm listening.
He talks about having a clear purpose,
Protest so good.
goals that align with our values.
Right, like a roadmap.
And then the hard part,
Which is
actually taking action.
easier said than done.
It is, but Seneca's all about action.
He's not just some armchair philosopher.
No, he's out there in the world.
Getting things done.
And he expects us to do the same.
It's almost like
Yeah.
he's outlining a Stoic productivity plan.
Centuries before anyone even thought of life hacks.
Right. And it's not just about checking off tasks.
It's deeper than that.
It's about aligning our actions.
With what gives our lives meaning,
Finding that sweet spot.
where productivity meets purpose.
Okay, I like that.
And speaking of things that can derail us,
What's that?
comparison.
Oh, the thief of joy.
Seneca was very aware of its dangers.
Especially in our modern world.
With social media and all.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Of comparing ourselves to others.
Scrolling through feeds.
Feeling inadequate.
Thinking, why isn't my life like that?
The perfect vacations, the amazing careers.
It's a recipe for misery.
Seneca would probably shake his head.
And say,
Focus on your own path.
you probably remind us.
That the only race worth running
Yeah.
is the one against our former selves.
Striving to become better.
Not trying to keep up with the Joneses.
That's the essence of Stoic growth, isn't it?
It is. It's about internal progress.
Not outward achievements.
And that can be a tough shift.
Especially in a society that values appearances.
It is, but it's a worthwhile one.
Focusing on what truly matters.
Becoming the best versions of ourselves.
And Seneca wouldn't just leave it at that.
No, he wouldn't.
He gives us practical advice.
On how to actually do this.
Right, he talks about criticism.
Both giving and receiving it.
In letter 29, I think. He advises against unsolicited advice.
Especially to those who aren't receptive.
It's like, pick your battles, right?
Exactly. Sometimes silence is more powerful.
Than words.
And on the flip side,
When we're receiving criticism.
even if it's not delivered perfectly.
Yeah, even if it stings.
Seneca encourages us to be open-minded.
To see it as an opportunity for learning. I've noticed that myself.
How so?
When I can set aside my ego.
And really listen.
Even the tough feedback can be insightful.
It's like having a blind spot illuminated.
You suddenly see yourself more clearly.
And Seneca was a master of metaphors.
He loved using those vivid images.
to make abstract concepts more relatable.
Remember that story about Hannibal?
In letter 51,
Yes. the brilliant general.
Undone by his own success.
He gets a taste of the good life.
And loses his edge.
What's the takeaway there?
It's about choosing our environment wisely.
Our surroundings shape us.
They influence our thoughts, habits, even our character.
Seneca's saying, surround yourself with what supports you, not what undermines you.
That's so relevant today.
More than ever.
With all the distractions we face.
The constant barrage of information.
Social media, the pressure to keep up.
It's overwhelming.
So we need to be intentional.
About what we allow into our lives.
Curate our digital and physical spaces.
Create environments that foster well-being.
And growth.
It's about setting boundaries, right?
Exactly. Choosing what we let in.
And what we keep out.
And even amidst all that chaos.
Seneca reminds us.
Of what?
That we can still find inner peace.
He talks about that in letter 9, right?
Yes. The importance of stillness.
And solitude.
Even just for a few minutes each day.
It's like hitting the pause button.
Reconnecting with ourselves.
Creating a mental sanctuary.
To process our thoughts and emotions.
To find calm amidst the storm.
It's like a mini meditation.
Taking a few deep breaths.
Quieting mental chatter.
Even a few minutes can make a difference.
It can change your whole perspective.
And speaking of perspective,
Seneca
had a lot to say about joy.
True joy.
He argued that it's not about fleeting pleasures.
Or external circumstances.
It comes from within.
That reminds me of letter 23.
What does he say there?
He distinguishes between pleasure and joy.
They're not the same thing.
He's not saying we should avoid pleasure.
No, but we should be mindful.
About the kind of pleasure we pursue.
And how much we allow it to influence us.
It's about finding a balance.
Enjoying the good things.
Without becoming attached.
Recognizing that true joy comes from living our values.
From pursuing worthy goals.
That's making a positive contribution.
It's like finding satisfaction in the journey.
Not just the destination.
And recognizing that true happiness
is independent of external factors.
It comes from within.
And that leads us to another key theme.
What is it?
Self-sufficiency.
What did Seneca say about that?
He argued that true freedom...
Freedom from what?
From relying on external things for our well-being.
So it's about recognizing...
that we already have everything we need to be happy.
We don't need to constantly chase things.
Or seek approval from others.
It's a shift in focus.
From lack to gratitude.
From what we don't have.
To what we already possess.
And that's where true wealth lies.
In our inner resources.
Our character, our values.
Our ability to find contentment.
No matter the circumstances.
And Seneca was big on reflecting on the past.
Not in a dwelling on regrets kind of way.
More like drawing lessons from our experiences.
In letter 49.
Yes.
He looks back on his own life.
Acknowledging the joys and the missteps.
And how they've shaped him.
It's like he's having a conversation with his younger self.
Offering wisdom and encouragement.
Recognizing that the past has shaped us.
But it doesn't define us. It's like carrying a backpack.
Filled with memories and lessons.
Using them to navigate the present.
And the future.
Learning from our experiences.
Both the good and the bad.
Using those lessons to guide us.
Towards a more meaningful life.
So it's about understanding the forces
that have shaped us.
And using that knowledge.
You create a more beautiful and resilient inner self.
It's powerful stuff.
And this brings us to another crucial aspect of Seneca's philosophy.
Okay, tell me.
The power of virtue. For Seneca, virtue isn't just about being a good person.
It's more than that.
It's about aligning with our highest selves.
Striving for excellence.
Cultivating wisdom, courage, justice, temperance.
Building an inner fortress.
That can withstand anything.
And in letter 72.
He reminds us that philosophy shouldn't be a side hobby.
Not something we do in our spare time.
It should be part of who we are.
Woven into our daily lives.
Informing our choices and actions.
It's like making philosophy our operating system.
The lens through which we see the world.
I like that.
And one thing that strikes me
about Seneca
is how practical he is.
He walks the walk.
He doesn't just talk about virtue.
He lives it.
In letter 83.
He gives us a peek into his routine.
Shows how he structured his days.
To make time for reflection, study, connection.
It's fascinating to see.
How he prioritized his time and energy.
Even back then.
It makes his advice feel so relevant.
Absolutely. And while our routines might be different,
we can still apply the same principle.
Be intentional with your time.
Carve out space for what matters.
And speaking of heavier topics.
What do you mean?
Like death.
Seneca didn't shy away from that.
No, he encouraged us to contemplate it.
Not in a morbid way.
But as a way to appreciate life.
In letter 77, he says,
The length of our lives is less important
than the depth.
how much meaning and purpose we infuse.
That story about the Spartan boy.
Choosing death over slavery.
So powerful.
It reminds us we have a choice.
Even in the face of incredible challenges,
We can choose how we respond.
it's a call to live with courage and integrity.
And in Letter 78,
When Seneca talks about his own illness,
and aging,
what strikes me is his acceptance,
even a sense of peace.
in the face of hardship.
It's not about being emotionless.
Right. It's about finding resilience
Navigating difficult moments with grace.
and dignity.
It's about recognizing
Yeah.
that life has both light and shadow.
And appreciating the beauty of it all.
So as we wrap up our time with Seneca,
What are some key takeaways
that we can actually use?
in our lives?
Well, one big one is this.
What's that?
We have more control over our inner world.
Than we think.
We can't always control external events,
But we can choose how we react,
how we interpret them.
how we let them shape us.
It's about taking ownership.
Of our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Our happiness doesn't depend on circumstances,
It comes from within.
which brings us to another takeaway.
Okay, go on.
The power of virtue.
Seneca's big on that.
He says living a good life,
Isn't it about fleeting pleasures?
or external validation,
It's about cultivating inner qualities,
wisdom, courage, justice, temperance,
becoming our best selves,
not for the praise,
but because it's the right thing to do.
finding our inner compass.
Our sense of purpose.
And as we navigate life's twists and turns,
Don't forget connection.
Seneca believed in friendship and mentorship.
Surrounding ourselves with the right people.
Those who inspire and support us.
You don't have to go it alone.
And lastly, Seneca's call to action.
Philosophy isn't just about thinking.
It's about living
Putting these principles into practice.
every single day
Making our lives a reflection.
of the virtues we admire,
Embracing the journey.
with all its joys and challenges,
Knowing we have the strength within.
to navigate it with purpose.
And to leave the world a little better.
Then we found it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Seneca.
It's been a journey,
Exploring his wisdom
and discovering its relevance.
to our modern lives.
And until next time,
May Seneca's words guide you,
as he said, it's not that we have a short time to live.
but that we waste a lot of it.
So let's make the most of our time.
Inspired by this ancient philosopher.